Hey, all you cool cats and kittens, Mr. Huddleston here for your next space science lesson. This one will be on constellations. So, from what I hear, you guys in math class with Miss Gary have been uh, using math and plotting constellations. And, well, today is finding out all about those constellations. So I'm not going to introduce you to all of them because that would take forever. But I'm going to show you some common ones that you can see um, from your own backyard, from our place on the Earth in the northwest corner of Washington State. Um, and you can see some of the patterns here in this picture, and we're going to look at some of these famous constellations. Now, of course, that's not what it looks like when you look up into the sky. It looks kind of like this. Um, there are some stargazer apps you can get for a smartphone or a tablet that you can point at the night sky and will actually connect those lines for you to help you show that. But maybe you didn't have one of those and you've maybe hopefully you've looked up into the night sky and on a nice clear night where there's no clouds, sometimes you can see some really amazing stars and even planets and maybe a passing satellite in the distance. I hope all of you have looked up before at night. If not, I really suggest you try it, especially this summer as the weather is getting warm. Usually, that's the best time to look at these constellations. So, some of the constellations I'm sharing with you, you will see in the summer, and some you'll see more often in the winter, but most of these you'll see in the summer. Uh, why is that? Well, we'll get to that a little bit later. Um, one of my favorite times to look at the stars is usually when I'm camping or I'm somewhere that's far away from city lights is usually the best places to see stars. When I worked at Camp Kirby, there's great stargazing there. If I go up into the North Cascades, like where we had mountain school, and on a clear night, you can see the stars. It's amazing. Eastern Washington, especially during the summer, is a great place to look at the stars because there's a lot less clouds. So let's look at some of these famous constellations. The first one is definitely the most famous and probably one of the constellations that you can spot pretty easy in the night sky. So I'm going to give you a second to think about that. What constellation do you know and that you see that you've been able to see before? Ready? Well, it's called Ursa Major, but you might know it as a different name. You're probably thinking of the Big Dipper and maybe the Little Dipper. So right here, we've got a little picture here of the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper that looks like a big spoon. This is definitely the most notable constellation out in the sky. The Big Dipper is really easy to see, especially in the summertime here in Washington. And then if you look just across from that, you can see the Little Dipper upside down. And as I'll talk about in here, different cultures, different places of the world all had different constellations and myths and stories to go along with those star patterns. Primarily, the ones we talk about come from Greek culture in Europe, but other people all over the world had different images and stories and patterns they put together. So the constellations from people in Africa were different. The constellations people in Asia and China and places like that were a lot different. Native American constellations, they all have different names for these. But according to the Greeks, they called it Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. They are basically, that means big bear and little bear. They kind of made a story of some bears right there. We got the big bear and the little bear. It does kind of take your imagination to see some of these images they have. Some are more obvious than others. But to most people, they see the Big Dipper, this big old spoon. And there's also the story of that pointing to the direction of north. If you look at the scoop where my mouse is, and if you follow the edge up diagonally to the tail of the Little Dipper, Polaris, that is also the North Star, which will put you in the northern direction. And that was often used by escaped slaves from the South if they were trying to find their way north to freedom. And here's what it looks like without any lines or any way of cheating to see the constellation. So give yourself a second, and hopefully you can see the Big Dipper there, or Ursa Major. If you haven't found it yet, you can see these bright stars. You can see the ladle, like the handle of this big spoon right there. The next famous constellation, probably the most second famous constellation that you've ever heard of or can see, is Orion. Let's get rid of this thing here. Orion is a prominent constellation located on the celestial equator, visible throughout the world. It is one of the most recognizable constellations in the night sky. It was named after Orion, a hunter in Greek mythology. Its brightest stars are Rigel and Betelgeuse, or Betelgeuse, as like some people like to call it. The three stars in the middle of the constellation form. Getting cut off here. Form the belt is what they're talking about right here. So a lot of times people can find its distinct belt with these three bright stars, and then you can kind of see the rest of the body of Orion. You got Betelgeuse up here, and then you kind of have his arm coming up with a club, and sometimes it's depicted as a shield or a bow and arrow. Sometimes it's like a lion head, and then his legs coming down like this. But it's a little bit easier to see in the winter, but you can really find it by this belt in the sky. This kind of gives you an idea of what it might look like in the night sky. Now for the mythology part, Orion the Hunter. Here's some artistic depictions of him. In this case, he's got his shield and a big wooden club there. He's got his hunter garb on. Back then, everyone, men and women, kind of wore skirt type things. In this case, instead of a shield, he's got this lion head, kind of gruesome looking. But Orion was a giant huntsman in Greek mythology. Orion hunted with the goddess Artemis and her mother Leto. And in the course of the hunt, threatened to kill every beast on Earth. Mother Earth objected and sent a giant scorpion to kill Orion. The creature succeeded, and after his death, the goddess asked Zeus to place Orion among the constellations. Zeus consented, which means he agreed, and as a memorial to the hero's death, added the scorpion to the heavens as well. So, pretty crazy stories in mythology there. So he tried to kill everything he could because he was such a good hunter. And Mother Earth sent a scorpion after him. And the scorpion is called Scorpio. And that's a constellation as well. Cassiopeia. This is a fun one you can see. I see this one in the summertime all the time, and it's really distinctive as the W. It forms a W, boop, boop, just like that. And you can see those stars like that. This is a really good one to see in the summertime. Cassiopeia is a constellation in the northern sky named after a vain queen, Cassiopeia, in Greek mythology, who boasted about her unrivaled beauty. It is easily recognizable by its distinctive W-shaped, formed by 5 bright stars. So in middle school and high school, you guys will read into Greek mythology a bit more. Some of the topics are a little bit iffy for 5th grade, but Greek mythology is pretty wild. It basically inspired modern day comic books and superhero stories too. Booties. Everyone loves saying booties. This is a kite-shaped constellation. Going back to the Big Dipper, follow the handle down to a bright star called Arcturus. This is the brightest constellation in the constellation Bootes, the herdsman. Bootes looks like a kite, with Arcturus at the bottom point of the kite. You can see the bright star right there at the point. And you might be going, well, I don't know how I see a herdsman there. I'll show you some art in a little bit. But I just think of it as the kite-shaped constellation. Very distinct and has a really funny name, Bootes. And so it's really easy to see with that shape there and finding that bright star Arcturus right there. Here is some art with the kind of Greek depiction of the herdsman there. And you can kind of see how he's got the kite shape, I guess, and then his dogs that he used to herd his sheep or something. Bootes is a constellation in northern sky. The name is Greek, meaning herdsman or plowman. Bootes is depicted in Rana's mirror. In his left hand, he holds his hunting dogs, Canis Venatasi. Below them is the constellation Berenices. So he's got some hunting dogs there. Well, now it's your turn. Time to create your own constellation and myth. So you get to design your own constellations. Pretty easy. You've been doing it before. You get to kind of create your own image you'd want and connect the dots, and then maybe write a little story about your myth. You can make up anything. So one way you can do that, you can draw it on paper. You can use what you've been doing with Miss Gary. You can also, if you go into Paint, where we go? If you have Paint, let's see here. There we go. You can find a program, or you can even, there's free ones online that you can use too. And you can create on here. You can mark each star with a dot and maybe connect some lines. I think you can also do, let's see, that's the spray paint. Usually there's like a little line connect too that you can make with them, but you can make up a story. Maybe you want to create a giant squid type thing. I don't know. Mine's terrible, obviously, so you'll spend some time on it. All right, guys, good luck on your constellations. And I'll talk to you. Well, I won't really talk to you. I guess I'll see you later.